Okay, hi guys, welcome back to the BFG by Roald Dahl. Hope you enjoyed the first video. I'm already back for more. How has it got to that time already? So the next chapter is called Giants. I'm going to read until I can't anymore or have made the video long enough. Let's get going. The Giants. But if you are so nice and friendly, Sophie said, then why didn't you snatch me from my bed and run away with me? Because you saw me, the big friendly giant answered. If anyone has ever seen a giant, he or she must be taken away, hip switch. Why? Asked Sophie. Well, first of all, said the BFG, human beings does not really believe in giants, is they? Human beings is not thinking we exist. I do, Sophie said. Ah, but that is only because you have seen me, cried the BFG. I cannot possibly allow anyone, even little girls, to be seeing me and staying at home. The first thing you would be doing, you would be scuttling around yodeling the news that you are actually seeing a giant, and then a great giant hunt, a mighty giant hunt, look see. I would be starting up all over the world with the human beings all rummaging for the great giant, and you saw and getting wildly excited. People would be coming, rushing and bushing after me with goodness knows what, and they would be catching me and locking me into a cage to be stared at. They would be putting me into the zoo or a bunkum house with all those squiggling hippo dumplings and crocodile dillies. Sophie knew that what the giant said was true. If any person reported actually having seen a giant haunting the streets of a town at night, there would most certainly be a terrific hullabaloo across the world. I will bet you, the BFG went on, that you would have been splashing the news all over the wonky world, wouldn't you? If I hadn't whittled you away. I suppose I would, Sophie said. And that would never do, said the big BFG. So what will happen to me now? Sophie asked. If you don't call back, you'll be telling the world, said the BFG, most likely on the telebuncum box and the radio squeaker. So you'll just have to be staying here with me for the rest of your life. Oh no, cried Sophie. Oh yes, said the BFG, but I am warning you not ever to go whiffling about out of this cave without I is with you, or we'll be coming to an unlucky mucky end. I is showing you now who is going to eat you up if they is ever catching even one tiny little glimmer of you. The big friendly giant picked Sophie off the table and carried her to the cave entrance. He rolled the huge stone to one side and said, Peep out over there, little girl, and tell me what you is seeing. Sophie, sitting on the BFG's hand, peeped out of the cave. The sun was up now and shining fiery hot over the great yellow wasteland with its blue rocks and dead trees. Is you seeing them? The BFG asked. Sophie, squinting through a glare of the sun, saw several tremendous tall figures moving among the rocks about 500 yards away. 3 or 4 others were sitting quite motionless on the rocks themselves. This is giant country, the BFG said. Those is all giants, every one. It was a brain-boggling sight. The giants were all naked except for a sort of short skirt around their waists, and their skins were burnt by the sun. But it was the sheer size of each one of them that boggled Sophie's brain most of all. They were simply colossal, far taller and wider than the big friendly giant upon whose hand she was now sitting. And oh, how ugly they were! Many of them had large bellies, all of them had long arms and big feet. They were too far away for their faces to be seen clearly, and perhaps that was a good thing. What on earth are they doing? Sophie asked. Nothing, said the BFG. They're just mooching and fooching around and waiting for the night to come. Then they will be galloping off to places where people is living to find their suppers. You mean to Turkey, Sophie said. Both crunching giants will be galloping to Turkey, of course, said the BFG. But the others will be whiffling off all sorts of flung-away places like Wellington for the booty flavour and the Panama for the heady taste. Every giant is having his own favourite hunting ground. Do they ever go to England? Sophie asked. Often, said the BFG. They say the English is tasting ever so wonderfully of quadricolor. I'm not sure I quite know what that means, Sophie said. Meanings is not important, said the BFG. I cannot be right all the time. Quite often I is left instead of the right. And are all those beastly giant bones then really going off again tonight to eat people? Sophie asked. All of them, guzzling human beings every night, the BFG answered. All of them excepting me. That is why you'll be coming to an unlucky mucky end if that's why you'll be coming to an unlucky mucky end if any of them should ever be getting his goblets upon you. You would be swallowed up like a piece of frumpkin pie, all in $1. But eating people is horrible, Sophie cried. It's frightful. Why don't someone stop them? And who, please, is going to be stopping them? Asked the BFG. Couldn't you? Said Sophie. Never in a pig's whistle, cried the BFG. All those man-eating giants is enormous and very fierce. They is all at least 2 times my wideness and double my royal highness. Twice as high as you, cried Sophie. Exactly that, said the BFG. You were seeing them in the distance, but just you wait till you get them close up. Those giants is all at least 50 feet tall with huge muscles and cockles alive old. I is the titular one. I is the run. 24 feet is puddle nuts in giant country. You mustn't feel bad about it, Sophie said. I think you're just great. Why, even your toes must be as big as sausages. Bigger, said the BFG, looking pleased. They is as big as Bumple's hammers. How many giants are there out there? Sophie asked. 9 altogether, answered the BFG. That means, said Sophie, that somewhere in the world, every single night, 9 wretched people get carried away and eaten alive. More, said the BFG. It is all depending, you see, on how big the human being is. Japanese beans is very small, so a giant will need to gobble up 6 Japanese before his feet fill up. Others, like the Norway people and the Yankee Doodles, is never so much bigger, and understanding 2 or 3 of those makers a good tuck in. But do those disgusting giants go every single country in the world? Sophie asked. All countries excepting Greece is getting visited some time or another, the BFG answered. The country which a giant visits is depending on how he is feeling. If it is very warm weather and a giant is feeling as hot as a sizzle pan, he will probably go galloping far up to the Frisbee North to get himself an Eskimo or 2 to cool him down. A nice fat Eskimo to a giant is a lovely ice cream lolly to you. I'll take your word for it, Sophie said. And then again, if it is a frosty night and the giant is fridging with cold, he will probably point his nose towards the sweltering hotlands to guzzle a few Hottentots to warm him up. How perfectly horrible, Sophie said. Nothing hots a cold giant up like a Hottentot, the BFG said. And if you were to put me down on the ground and I was to walk out among them now, Sophie said, would they really eat me up? Like a whiff, little, cried the BFG. And what is more, you is so small they wouldn't even have to chew you. The first one to be seeing you would pick you up in his fingers, and down you'd go like a drop of drained water. Let's go back inside, Sophie said. I hate even watching them. Just going to plug in my charger, guys. Then I'll read the next chapter. I do apologise, I thought I had enough. Okay, next chapter. So sorry about that, guys. It's called The Marvellous Ears. Back in the cave, the big friendly giant sat Sophie down once again on the enormous table. Is you quite snugly in there, United? He asked. Isn't frigid cold? I'm fine, Sophie said. I cannot help thinking, said the BFG, about your poor mother and father. By now they must be jipping and skulking all over the house, shouting, Hello, hello, where is Sophie gone? I don't have a mother and father, Sophie said. They both died when I was a baby. Oh, you poor little scrumplet, cried the BFG. Is you not missing them very badly? Not really, Sophie said, because I never knew them. You always make me sad, the BFG said, rubbing his eyes. Don't be sad, Sophie said. No one is going to be worrying too much about me. That place you took me from was the village orphanage. We are all orphans in there. You is an orphan? Yes. How many is in there? 10 of us, Sophie said, all little girls. Was you happy there? The BFG asked. I hated it, Sophie said. The woman who ran it was called Mrs. Clonkers, and if she caught you breaking any of the rules, like getting out of bed at night or folding up your clothes, you got punished. Punished. How was you getting punished? She locked us in the dark cellar for the day and a night without anything to eat or drink. The rotten old rotter strapper, cried the BFG. It was horrid, Sophie said. We used to dread it. There were rats down there. We could hear them creeping about. The filthy old fizzwiggler, shouted the BFG. That is the horridest thing I was ever hearing of for years. He was making me sadder than ever. All at once a huge tear that would have filled a bucket rolled down one of the BFG's cheeks and fell as a splash on the floor. It made quite a puddle. Sophie watched with astonishment. What a strange and moody creature this is, she thought. One moment he is telling me my head is full of squashed flies, and the next moment his heart is melting for me because Mrs. Clonkers locked us in the cellar. The thing that worries me, Sophie said, is having to stay in this dreadful place for the rest of my life. The orphanage was pretty awful, but I wouldn't have been there forever, would I? All is my fault, the BFG said. I is the one who kid-snatched you. Yet another enormous tear welled from his eye and splashed onto the floor. Now I come to think of it, I won't actually be here all that long, Sophie said. I was afraid you will, the BFG said. No, I won't, Sophie said. Those brutes out there are bound to catch me sooner or later and have me for tea. I is not going to let that happen, the BFG said. For a few moments the cave was silent. Then Sophie said, May I ask you a question? The BFG wiped his tears from his eyes with the back of his hand and gave Sophie a long, thoughtful stare. Shoot away, he said. Would you please tell me what you were doing in our village last night? Why you were poking that long trumpet thing in the Gucci children's bedroom and then blowing through it. Aha, cried the BFG, sitting up suddenly in his chair. Now he's getting nosier than a Parker. And the suitcase you were carrying, Sophie said. What on earth was that all about? The BFG stared suspiciously at the small girl sitting cross-legged at the table. You is asking me to tell you whoopsie big secrets, he said. Secrets that nobody is ever hearing before. I won't tell a soul, Sophie said. I swear it. How could I anyway? I am stuck here for the rest of my life. You could be telling the other giants. No, I couldn't, Sophie said. You told me they would eat me up at the moment they saw me. And so they would, said the BFG. You as a human being, and human beings would like straw bunkles and cream to those giants. If they are going to eat me at any moment and see me, then I wouldn't have time to tell them anything, would I? Sophie said. You wouldn't, said the BFG. Then why did you say I might? Because I is brimful of buzzburgers, the BFG said. If you listen to everything I am saying, you will be getting earache. Please tell me what you are doing in our village, Sophie said. I promise you can trust me. Would you teach me how to make an elephant? The BFG asked. What do you mean? Sophie said. I would dearly love to have an elephant to ride on, the BFG said dreamily. I would so much love to have a jumbly big elephant and go riding through the green forest picking the peachy fruits off the trees all day long. This is a sizzling hot, mum-fronting country we is living in. Nothing grows in it except log timbers. I would love to go somewhere else to pick up the peachy fruits in the early morning from the back of the elephant. Sophie was quite moved by the curious statement. Perhaps one day we will get you an elephant, she said, and peachy fruits as well. Now tell me what you were doing in our village. If you was really wanting to know what I am doing in your village, the BFG said, I was blowing a dream into the bedroom of those children. Blowing a dream, Sophie said. What do you mean? Why is a dream blowing giant, the BFG said. When all the other giants is galloping off every rotten way, and which to swallow are human beings, I is scuttling away to other places to blow dreams into the bedrooms of sleeping children. Nice dreams, lovely golden dreams, dreams that I is giving the dreamers a happy time. Now, hang on a minute, Sophie said. Where do you get these dreams? I collect them, the BFG said, waving an arm towards all the rows and rows of bottles on the shelves. I have billions of them. You can't collect a dream, Sophie said. A dream isn't something you can catch hold of. You is never going to understand about it, the BFG said. That is why I is not wishing you to tell you. Oh, please tell me, Sophie said. I will understand. Go on. Tell me how you collect dreams. Tell me everything. The BFG settled himself comfortably in his chair and crossed his legs. Dreams, he said, is very mysterious things. They is floating around in the air like wispy little misty bubbles, and the time they is searching for sleeping people. Can you see them? Sophie said. Never at first. Then how do you catch them if you can't see them? Sophie asked. Aha, said the BFG. Now he is getting on to the dark and dusty secrets. I won't tell a soul. I is trusting you, the BFG said. He closed his eyes and sat quite still for a moment while Sophie waited. A dream, he said, as it goes whiffling through the night air is making a tiny little buzzing, humming noise. But this little buzzy hum is so silvery soft it is impossible for a human being to hear it. Can you hear it? Sophie asked. The BFG pointed up at his enormous truck wheel ears, and now he began to move in and out. He performed his exercise proudly, with a little proud smile on his face. Is you seeing these? He asked. How could I miss them? Sophie said. They may be as looking a bit preposterous to you, the BFG said, but you must believe me when I say they're very extra useful ears indeed. They is not to be coughed at. I'm quite sure they are not, Sophie said. They has allowed me to hear absolutely every single twiddly little thing. You mean you can hear things I can't hear, Sophie said. You was deaf as a dumpling compared to me, cried the BFG. You was hearing only thumping noises with those little earwigs of yours. Now I'm hearing all the secret whisperings of the world. Such as what? Sophie asked. In your country, he said, I is hearing the footsteps of a ladybird as she goes walking across a leaf. Honestly, Sophie said, beginning to be impressed. What's more, I is hearing those footsteps very loud, the BFG said. When a ladybird is walking across a leaf, I is hearing her feet going clumpety clump, clumpety clump, like giant's footsteps. Good gracious me, Sophie said. What else can you hear? I is hearing the little ants chittering to each other as they scuttle around in the soil. I mean, you can hear ants talking. Every single word, the BFG said, although I is not exactly understanding their language. Go on, Sophie said. Sometimes on a very clear night, the BFG said, and if I is swiggling my ears in the right direction, and here he swiveled his great ears upwards so they were facing the ceiling, if I is swiggling them like this, and the night is very clear, I is sometimes hearing faraway music coming from stars in the sky. A queer little shiver passed through Sophie's body. She sat very quiet, waiting for more. My ears is what told me you was watching me out of your window last night, the BFG said. I didn't make a sound, Sophie said. I was hearing your heart beating across the road, the BFG said. Loud as a charm. Go on, Sophie said, please. I can hear plants and trees. Do they talk? Sophie asked. They is not exactly talking, the BFG said, but they is making noises. For instance, if I come along and I is picking a lovely flower, if I is twisting the stem of the flower till it breaks, then the plant is screaming. I can hear it screaming and screaming very clear. You don't mean it, Sophie cried. How awful. It is screaming just like you would be screaming if someone was twisting your arm right on. Is that really true? Sophie asked. You think I is swizz-figgling you? This is rather hard to believe. Then I is stopping right here, the BFG said sharply. I is not wishing to be called a fibster. Oh no, I'm not calling you anything, Sophie cried. I believe you, I do, really. Please go on. The BFG gave a long, hard stare. Sophie looked right back at him, her face open to his. I believe you, she said softly. She had offended him. She could see that. I would ever be fibbing to you, she said. I know you wouldn't, Sophie said, but you must understand that it isn't easy to believe such amazing things straight away. I understand that, the BFG said. So please forgive me and go on, she said. He waited a while longer, and then he said, Is it the same with trees as is flowers? If I was chopping an axe into the trunk of a big tree, I was hearing a terrible sound coming from inside the heart of the tree. What sort of sound? Sophie asked. A soft moaning sound, the BFG said. It is like the sound of an old man making when he is dying slowly. He paused. The cave was very silent. Trees is living and growing just like you and me, he said. There's a lie. So is plants. He was sitting very straight in his chair now, his hands clasped tightly together in front of him. His face was bright, his eyes round and bright as two stars. Such wonderful and terrible sounds I is hearing, he said. Some of them you would never wish to be hearing yourself, but some is like glorious music. He seemed almost to be transfigured by the excitement of his thoughts. His face was beautiful in his blaze of emotions. Tell me some more about them, Sophie said quietly. You ought to be hearing the little miceys talking, he said. The little miceys is always talking to each other, and I is hearing them as loud as my own voice. What do they say? Sophie asked. Only miceys know that, he said. Spiders is also talking a great deal. You might not be thinking it, but spiders are the most tremendous natterboxes. And when they are spinning their webs, they are singing all the time. They are singing sweeter than a nightingale. What else do you hear? Sophie asked. One of the biggest chatbags is the caterpillars, said the BFG. What do they say? They is arguing all the time about who is going to be the prettiest butterfly. And that is all they are ever talking about. Is there a dream floating around in here now? Sophie asked. The BFG moved his great ears this way and that, listening intensely. He shook his head. There is no dream in here, he said, except the bottles. I have a special place to go for catching dreams. They is not often coming to Giant Country. Do you catch them? How do you catch them? The same way you is catching butterflies, said the BFG answers. With a net. He stood up and crossed over to a corner of the cave where a pole was leaning against the wall. The pole was about 30 feet long, and there was a net on the end of it. Here, the dream catcher sat. Here is the dream catcher, he said, grasping the pole in one hand. Every morning I is going out and snitching new dreams to put in my bottles. Suddenly he seemed to lose interest in the conversation. I is getting hungry, he said. It is time for eats. And that is where I'm going to stop it. It was longer than I thought it was going to be, because I now have to go out and see my friends. So I normally start these videos by saying I don't own any of this content, I'm just reading it out. So, like I say, Roald Dahl owns this content, I'm just reading it out for pleasure. Thank you for listening again. I really do love this book, and I hope you're enjoying it too. Till the next time, guys, goodbye.